Young and the Restless spoilers. I'm Nikki Newman. Please like, share, and subscribe to my channel. The night does not arrive gently in Genoa City when men like Adam and Nick are running toward danger instead of away from it. It comes down like a threat, heavy and unnatural, stretching over every bad decision, every old wound, every unresolved grudge, until the whole city feels like it is holding its breath for the worst thing imaginable. And somewhere beyond that darkness, far from the illusion of control, they keep trying to cling to Vegas waits like a trap built for men who still believe they can outthink a monster simply because they know his name. That is the most dangerous lie in this entire mess. Matt is no ordinary enemy, not some loud fool driven by blind rage and easy mistakes. He is patient, slippery, cold in the way that truly dangerous men often are. He understands that panic is a weapon, that absence is a weapon, that letting Adam and Nick keep chasing shadows is sometimes far more effective than stepping into the light. By the time they realize this, the game may already belong to him. I don't want to be mean about people's appearances. I certainly don't look perfect, but I try to hide bits of me that may not be very flattering when I choose cloths. How come the stylists in this show seem to always want to put Michelle Stafford in really plunging necklines when her chest area doesn't look that great, sort of reddish skin? Why can't they hide that with makeup or clothes? Michelle is a beautiful actress. Maybe the stylists are jealous and want to bring out any imperfections in her. Victor and the rest can tufe BCs. They can't test him for too long, so he's giving them plenty work to do until he's ready for them scumbags. Hey, need to get rid of all the Newmans and Abbotts like they did with the Fosters, Brooks, and Williams and bring in new characters. These writers are terrible. Victoria has no problem using other people's children. She is no different than her daddy, which Victor needs to fall hard. That is why I am Team Phyllis, because she always takes her lumps, but Victor never gets in trouble. The money was earned by Victor. No AI program should be allowed to steal others' money. There is something almost tragic in the way Adam and Nick arrive in Vegas, because even before the first real confrontation happens, the tension between them is already sharp enough to cut through whatever fragile brotherhood they are trying to rebuild. They are united by the same goal, but not by the same spirit. Adam approaches the pursuit like someone who has spent his whole life learning how to survive hostile terrain. He knows how to read a lie, how to anticipate a setup, how to follow fear without becoming consumed by it. Nick, on the other hand, carries something far more dangerous into this hunt of motion. He wants this over. He wants Matt cornered, exposed, crushed under the weight of everything he has done. Nick does not just want justice, he wants release. He wants the pressure inside his chest to stop building every time another clue leads nowhere, every time another dead end makes him feel like Matt is somewhere nearby, smiling at how easy it is to make decent men lose control. That difference in temperament creates an immediate fracture. Adam keeps insisting that they need patience, that Matt is expecting recklessness, that a man who hides this well is not going to be dragged into the open by force. Nick hears the logic, but logic no longer feels like enough. From his point of view, patience has already cost them too much. Every hour Matt remains free is another hour in which he can strike, manipulate, disappear again. And perhaps the most painful part of Nick's mindset is that it is not entirely irrational. This is what makes the conflict so compelling. Adam is right to be cautious, and Nick is right to be terrified of waiting. Both instincts are valid, and that is exactly why the brothers begin to grind against each other more violently the deeper they move into Matt's territory. Vegas becomes less of a city and more of a psychological maze. The bright lights, the noise, the constant movement of strangers make it the perfect place for a predator to vanish. Matt understands how anonymity can be weaponized. He knows how to make every casino corridor, every back alley, every hotel elevator feel like an opening move in a game no one else fully understands. Adam starts piecing together signs that Matt has been watching them far more closely than they realized. Their movements are being anticipated. Places they planned to check have already been abandoned. People who might have talked are suddenly gone, frightened into silence, or paid off, or worse. There is a pattern to the emptiness they keep encountering, and Adam sees it first. Matt is not just hiding, he is hurting them. This is where the fear begins to change shape. At first, the brothers fear they will never find him. Then they realize something far worse. Matt may be allowing them to keep searching because he wants them tired, isolated, and emotionally compromised before he makes his real move. That realization should force them to slow down, but instead it intensifies everything. Nick becomes even more agitated, almost feverish in his need to strike first, while Adam grows colder, more calculating, more visibly convinced that one wrong move will get one of them killed. There is a subtle bitterness in Adam too, one he does not say out loud but cannot quite suppress. He knows Nick still sees him through the lens of old betrayals, old resentments, old family wars. Even here, even now, with the killer circling them, Adam can feel that Nick still doubts him in those crucial seconds where trust matters most, and that old pain twists the situation into something even uglier. They are not just fighting Matt. They are fighting every unresolved thing between them. Back in Genoa City, the dread spreads in quieter ways. The people who care about Adam and Nick are left with fragments, with tense updates and half-truths, with the sinking feeling that the deeper this pursuit goes, the more likely it becomes that one of them will not come back the same. That emotional distance adds another layer of pressure to the story. These men are not lone wolves. They are fathers, sons, brothers, former lovers, men whose recklessness will wound entire families if this ends badly. It is one thing to chase danger when the cost feels abstract. It is something else entirely when the faces of the people you might devastate begin to rise in your mind during the quiet moment. Nick feels that weight heavily, though he hates it because fear for himself would be easier to manage than fear for what his death would do to everyone else. As the search drags on, Adam begins to suspect Matt is trying to separate them. He notices how leads appear tailored to Nick's impulses, almost engineered to provoke him into acting alone. A witness describes a man matching Matt's build in an area Nick had specifically wanted to search by himself. A message appears through an indirect contact baiting with just enough personal detail to feel credible, just enough insult to feel intimate. Adam sees the trap instantly, but by then Nick's patience has burned down to nothing. This is where one of the smartest and darkest turns in the story begins. Matt does not need to overpower both brothers at once. He only needs one of them angry enough to forget the rules of survival. And Nick does exactly what Matt was waiting for. He leaves alone one night under the excuse of clearing his head, though in truth it is much more than that. He is suffocating under Adam's restraint, under the constant sense of being told to wait, to calculate, to contain himself. Nick has always prided himself on being the steadier brother, the one with clearer moral instincts, the one less willing to sink into obsession. But that image has begun to crack. This pursuit is bringing out something darker in him, something impulsive, almost self-destructive. He tells himself he just needs air, just needs distance from the pressure, but the walk through the Vegas night is really an act of emotional escape. He wants silence. He wants one moment without strategy. What he gets instead is the nightmare Adam feared all along. Matt appears not with grand theatrics, but with the suddenness of a thought turning violent. One moment, Nick is alone with the noise of the city humming at a distance, and the next he senses movement that feels wrong, too direct, too deliberate. By the time he turns, Matt is already there, emerging from the dark with the kind of calm that is more frightening than rage. He is not shouting. He is not wild-eyed. He is focused. And in his hand is a knife that catches just enough light to make the entire scene feel unreal, as though Nick has stepped into the exact scenario Adam tried to warn him about. What follows should terrify anyone who still believes this is a simple cat-and-mouse game. Nick runs, but not in panic at first. He runs with the desperate calculation of a man trying to survive long enough to make sense of what is happening. The sound of Matt pursuing him turns the entire night into a tunnel of fear. Vegas, once loud and crowded, suddenly feels empty in all the ways that matter. Every corner becomes a possible dead end. Every dark stretch of pavement feels like a place where blood could disappear before morning. Nick's breathing grows ragged, his thoughts splintering between instinct and memory. He remembers too much all at once. Old fights, old warnings, the people he loves, the unspoken possibility that this might be the stupid, brutal end he always imagined happened to other men, not to him. Matt is relentless. He does not rush recklessly because he does not need to. He knows fear will slow Nick down faster than exhaustion. He knows the hunted man always begins by thinking about escape and ends by thinking only about the next second. That shrinking of perspective is what predators count on. Nick can feel himself being reduced to raw instinct, and that humiliates him almost as much as it terrifies him. He has spent so much of his life trying to stay upright, decent, controlled, and now all of that is stripped away in favor of the oldest human emotion. There is the desperate need not to die. At the same time, Adam realizes too late that Nick is gone. The second he understands what happened, guilt slams into him with a force that nearly paralyzes him. For all their fighting, for all the distrust and resentment and history, Adam knows one truth with sickening clarity. He should have stopped this. He should have seen how close Nick was to snapping. He should have recognized that caution alone would never hold his brother together under this kind of pressure. This is where Adam becomes most human and, in my view, most interesting. His intelligence often makes him seem untouchable, almost too controlled, but the possibility of losing Nick tears right through that shell. Suddenly, this is not strategy anymore. It is terror. Not clean terror either, but the ugly kind full of guilt and old grief and the unbearable possibility that if Nick dies tonight, Adam will carry part of that death inside him forever. Adam starts hunting with a different energy now, one stripped of patience but not of precision. He retraces Nick's likely path, follows broken patterns, checks the places a frightened man would run and a hunter would exploit. His mind sharpens under pressure in a way that almost feels cruel, because why should he be best at this when the stakes are already this awful? Yet that contradiction is what defines him. Adam can be dark, manipulative, deeply flawed, but when crisis strips away the performance, what remains is a man who loves more fiercely than people want to believe. He may not know how to show it gently, but in this moment, his fear for Nick becomes a kind of rage all its own. Meanwhile, Nick's flight turns violent. Matt closes the distance at last, forcing a physical confrontation in a stretch of darkness that seems cut off from the rest of the city. Nick fights back harder than Matt expects, because fear has transformed him into something raw and ruthless. The struggle is chaotic, ugly, full of desperate strength rather than clean choreography. Nick lands blows, born of survival, not skill, and for a moment it almost seems enough. But Matt is too prepared, too committed, too willing to cross every line. The knife flashes again, and the uncertainty of the outcome becomes the cruelest part of the entire sequence. Did the blade go deep? Did it only graze him? Did Nick finally get away? Or did Matt at last puncture the illusion that the Newman brothers can keep outrunning the consequences of every enemy they make? That uncertainty should be savored because it intensifies everything around it. Adam arrives to signs of struggle, to scattered evidence that a nightmare unfolded here, but not immediate proof of how it ended. And that kind of scene is almost worse than a body because imagination becomes its own torture. He sees blood, but not enough to tell the story. He sees damage, but not certainty. He calls out for Nick into a darkness that feels indifferent. And for one horrible stretch of time, there is nothing. No answer, no movement, only the terrible possibility that Matt has finally done what he set out to do. This is the point where the story should not rush. It should let the dread breathe. It should allow Adam to descend into that unbearable place where rage and grief become indistinguishable. Because if Nick is dead or dying, Adam will never forgive himself. And if Nick survives, he will not survive unchanged. Either way, Matt has already won something by forcing that transformation. Eventually, the silence breaks, but not cleanly. Nick is found wounded or perhaps barely conscious, hidden by shadow and pain alive, but not victorious. That outcome, in many ways, is more powerful than immediate death. Death ends the conflict too quickly. Survival extends it. Survival means consequences, trauma, blame, guilt, and the unbearable knowledge that Adam was right and Nick still nearly paid with his life. Nick being stabbed but living would create exactly the kind of fallout this storyline deserves. It would force Adam into protective fury, push the family into panic, and leave Nick trapped in the humiliation and horror of having looked death in the face because he could not control his own anger. And that is where the emotional aftermath becomes richer than the attack itself. Nick, once stabilized, would not emerge heroic. He would emerge shaken furious with himself, unwilling to admit how close he came to vanishing in the dark. There is a brutal honesty in that kind of aftermath. Men like Nick are not just wounded physically, they are wounded in pride, in identity. He would hate the pity in other people's eyes. He would hate Adam for saving him if Adam did. He would hate Matt most of all, but beneath that hatred would be something even more corrosive: shame. Shame that he walked right into the trap. Shame that he gave Matt exactly what he wanted. Shame that his family now has to imagine the night he almost bled out alone in Vegas. Adam, on the other hand, would be transformed by the near loss. his anger would become colder, more personal, less interested in procedure or caution. A man like Adam can endure enormous emotional strain, but there is a specific kind of damage that comes from almost losing a brother you spent years failing to understand properly. He would blame Matt, obviously, but he would also blame himself for every dismissive glance, every argument, every second spent, assuming there would always be more time to fix what was broken between them. That kind of guilt can make a person dangerous. It can also make a person heartbreakingly sincere. For once, Adam's concern would not be abstract or hidden beneath cleverness. It would be naked, obvious, impossible to mistake. And I think that would shake Nick almost as much as the knife did. As for Matt, letting him remain a looming, unfinished terror is essential. If he disappears again after the attack, he becomes even more monstrous. Not because he is invincible, but because he understands how to leave just enough devastation behind to poison every relationship in his wake. Adam and Nick would no longer be hunting him from a place of strategy alone. They would be hunting him from trauma. That is exactly where Matt wants them. A traumatized enemy is easier to manipulate, easier to bait into further mistakes, easier to split apart. The bigger question, of course, is whether Nick and Adam can truly escape this monster. The fairest answer is yes, but not cleanly, not without scars, and certainly not in the way they expected. Physical escape is only the first level of survival. Emotional escape is much harder. Once Matt forces Nick into that primal terror and Adam into that panicked guilt, he has already altered them. The old brotherly tension cannot remain shallow after this. Either they rebuild something real out of the wreckage, or they fall even further apart under the weight of blame and wounded pride. Would Nick die? He could, and that possibility is what gives the whole story its pulse, but I think a near-fatal stabbing is the more devastating choice. Death creates shock. Survival creates torment. Survival keeps everyone awake at night. Survival lets Nick replay the knife glinting in the dark, lets Adam replay the empty silence before he found him, lets the family imagine what almost happened. Survival turns Matt from a threat into an obsession.